So last night was interesting. I got a call from Donald Trump, and it was. I didn't record the conversation, but I do have some recollection of it, and I thought I'd like to share some of it with you because it relates to this indictment of his that's coming up today. And incidentally, I'm wearing my Florida Go to Trial outfit. This is how we dress in Florida when we're getting ready to appear in court. So Don calls me, and I call him Don because we used to be neighbors in Palm Beach, and so he calls me and says, "Hey Ed," like we were best friends, right? Well, we weren't best friends. He never even spoke to me when I'd run into him at parties and things. I was introduced to him maybe 150,000 times, and he never once remembered who I was. But all of a sudden, we're best pals. So he says, "Hey Ed." And I said, "Who is this?" He says, "It's me, Donnie Trump." And I said, how do I know that this is really Donald Trump? He says, "Because I can tell you right now, Donald Trump is the greatest person who ever lived." Okay, that's all the proof I needed. So I said, "All right, Donnie, what can I do for you?" And he says, "Well, Ed," he says, "I recall that back in the day," everything with him is back in the day. Right? Back in the day, when we were young men in Palm Beach, you were a public defender." And I said, "Well, yeah, that's true. I was a public defender for a short while, but I was an assistant public defender, not the public defender. I worked for Wally Colbath." And he says, "Well, yeah," he says, I remember you well." Well, that was a lie right there. He didn't remember me at all. I says, "Does this have anything to do with this case that's been brought against you by the Justice Department?" He says, "Well, yeah, maybe a little." I said, "What do you mean by a little?" He says, "Well, I'm having a hard time, getting somebody to represent me." And I said, "Really? I'm surprised at that. Why is that?" He says, "I don't know, some nonsense about not paying their bills or listening to advice. I don't know what it is exactly. I think they just, they resent me because I'm smarter than they are." And I said, "Well, yeah, you are clearly you're smarter than every lawyer that ever lived." And I said, "But you didn't even mention how much better looking you are." He says, Yeah, that's right, I'm better looking too." And I said, "Well, you think you're better looking than I am?" Pause. And I don't mean a short pause. I mean, this pause went on for 15 minutes. Finally, he says, "Will that have anything to do with whether you're willing to help me out here?" I said, "Yeah, it's going to have everything to do with whether or not I'm going to help you out here. As you know," this is my talking to him, "I consider myself the best looking lawyer in the country. And if you're better looking than I am, that means you're better looking than every lawyer that ever lived, including Clarence Darrow and Abraham Lincoln." And he says, "Well, okay, I'm not better looking than you are, Ed." And I said, "I want to hear that again." And he said, You're better looking than I am." I said, "How much better looking am I than you are?" Now, those of you watching this right now are going to think, "What? Are these guys crazy? They're two old men and they're both ugly." I don't really care for your opinion, okay? So keep that to yourself. So he says, "You're much better looking than I am." I said, "Okay, I think maybe I can help you out here." So I said, "Well," he said, "Well, here's the thing, Ed. I'm not guilty." And I said, "Okay, why?" And I said, I agree with you actually on that. I objectively, and I didn't vote for you, I gotta be honest. I voted for myself. I've written myself in several times for President of the United States. For some reason, I get about as many people supporting me for president as I get watching this podcast, which is me, and sometimes my dog. So that's me to you, not me to Trump. I have to distinguish so that you know who's talking to whom, because that's important for this entire podcast. So I said, "Well, why do you think you're not guilty, Don?" He said, "Oh, because of the Presidential Records Act." I said, "No, that's not what I'm thinking." He said, "Oh," he said, "it's because," as president, I can declassify anything. No, I don't think that's what I'm thinking either. Well, why not? I said, well, first of all, you're being charged on the Espionage Act, which doesn't have anything to do with how documents are classified. And secondly, the courts have now, the 11th Circuit has firmly rejected this notion that you actually could declassify anything just by thinking about it or looking at it or saying it's declassified. There's a procedure you need to go through. And you didn't do that. But regardless, that's just a small part of what you're facing. Oh, he says, I know what it is. That slimy ex-lawyer that I said, careful here, because I don't want you saying that about me if I agree to take you on. Oh, no, Ed, I would never do that. I said, I'm not so sure. But what is it about that slimy ex-lawyer of yours? He says, well, he testified against me. And that's a violation of the attorney-client privilege, and I'm going to win on that one. That's what you're thinking, right, Ed? Not exactly. You already lost that argument once in court. You got the crime-fraud exception, and it appears from what has been stated in this indictment about your conversations with that lawyer, you were actually asking him to violate federal criminal laws. And that, if that doesn't fall under the crime-fraud exception, I don't know what does. He says, yeah, Ed, but you're forgetting. I've got Judge Cannon, and she's in my pocket. And I said, whoa, I hadn't thought about that. He said, yeah. My lawyers are going to, my lawyer, or if it's you, I would assume you would do this, Ed, for me because of our, we're old friends and neighbors. And I said, yeah, old friends and old former neighbors. He said, oh, not so fast. He says, you live up in Jupiter right near my sonny boy with the same name that I have, and I know that, that makes us still neighbors and close friends. I said, all right, we're close friends, and we're neighbors. And I have a soft spot in my heart for hopeless cases. What? You're saying my case is hopeless? No, I'm not saying your case is hopeless. I'm just saying that's my nature. I'm a good person. He said, yeah, me too. That's why we get along so well. I said, yeah, that's right, Donnie. You're a good person. I'm a good person. We're neighbors. We're friends. And you're not guilty. That's right, because of that stupid lawyer of mine. No, that's not the reason. That's not the reason. Well, Judge Cannon's going to throw out that. I said, yeah, she's going to throw it out, probably, in a pretrial motion. But guess what? The government can appeal a pretrial motion. Now, none of the talking heads are talking about that. So I'm just informing you, Donnie. Here's what's going to happen. Somebody is going to represent you. Maybe you'll represent yourself. No, don't say that. Okay. Although you seem to be pretty much representing yourself all the time anyway, but I understand what you're saying. You don't want to go out there and appear naked before the world. So some lawyer is going to come in and move Judge Cannon to quash any testimony by your former lawyer on the basis of attorney-client privilege, and she's going to grant that motion. The government, the next 30 seconds later, is going to file an appeal to the 11th Circuit. The 11th Circuit has already reversed Judge Cannon in no uncertain terms in a very harshly worded decision. And the judges who did it were mostly, Trump appointees. The 11th Circuit, and I know it well, is a very conservative circuit. And they just slammed her for trying to show favoritism toward you. And they're going to reverse her so fast that she won't even have time to reset her hair. So, and of course, your hair will then be on fire, but who's looking, right? When your hair looks like it's on fire all the time. Anyway, that's a little joke there. Come on, you can laugh at yourself. I know you can. All right, so that's going to go forward. So that's not it. That's not the defense. Well, what is the defense? Well, let me ask you this now. Why'd you take the documents in the first place? You don't have to answer that question, because I've never heard you answer that question. Unless it's, because I could. The second question is, the archives came to you and very politely asked you to return the documents that you had taken. Now, Joe Biden immediately returned his document. In fact, he's the one who brought it to their attention. Mike Pence immediately returned the documents. They not only made no effort, they were hands-on, proactive to get those documents over to the archives as quickly as they possibly could. And they found them. They themselves found, or their lawyers, their people, found these documents, notified the archives notified the FBI. Everything went in accordance with the spirit of pure cooperation. You, on the other hand, told the archives to go take a flying leap. Then you lied about, told your lawyer to lie in response to a question from the federal government about the Justice Department. You don't lie to the Justice Department about having the documents, not having any documents, having returned all the documents. What was that all about? In the first place, I do know you from the old days, and some of those documents involve nuclear secrets. And what's your background in nuclear technology? You don't have one. What's my background in nuclear technology? Well, I have a degree in physics. I was hired by the Air Force to work as a patent lawyer, particularly because of my expertise in nuclear weaponry. And so I have a pretty good background in that. Plus, I've spent many years as a patent lawyer, including working for not just the government, but also for Intel as a senior intellectual property and litigation lawyer. I'm just telling you that in case you forgot, because you understand that I understand what's in those documents were I to see them, because I have a solid background in nuclear weaponry. I actually designed nuclear weapons when I was in high school. So, because I grew up in the military, and everybody in the military that I knew was fascinated with weapon systems, particularly high technology. So, I understand this. You don't. So the question was, why would you want to keep documents relating to our nuclear secrets? Why would you be interested in keeping those things at all? You weren't going to read them. So were you going to sell them? Well, we don't have any evidence that you attempted to sell anything. That's a good point in your favor. Maybe you intended somewhere down the line to, but we don't know that. So what we have is basically unexplained and inexplicable conduct on your part. Conduct that just, because you put yourself in serious jeopardy, and you knew that, because everybody has seen all the things you said about Hillary Clinton and how one of the things you're going to do as president, you're going to make sure that the laws about classified documents are rigorously enforced, and you're going to protect all of the information relating to national defense. You're going to protect that vigorously, and anybody who tries to avoid that is going to be prosecuted. And you had a whole campaign where you'd go to these groups and they'd all say, "Oh, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up." So you knew about the consequences, potential consequences, even though your Justice Department never did anything about Hillary. But you knew, because we see you on tape all the time saying these things. So why in the world would you put yourself in that kind of jeopardy? It's inexplicable. It's illogical, and it's irrational. Don't make that face at me. I can hear you over the phone making that face. This is a good thing, Donald. Trust me on this. I was a public defender. What do we call people who behave in manners and who believe things that are untrue, who act in a manner which is completely irrational? What do we call that kind of behavior? Behavior that makes no sense at all, except to the person who's engaging in that behavior. We have a name for that. Come on, you don't want to say it, but you know you have to, because it's the only shot we have, but it's a damn good one. Not guilty by reason of... Could I have some background music here, please? All right, forget the music. Insanity. You have a perfect insanity defense. There's no rational basis for the things that you did, which were otherwise criminal in nature. And here's the beauty of an insanity defense. Normally, when people are found to be criminally insane, particularly if they've committed an act of violence, they go to an institution where they're locked up. And they're kept there until some panel of experts determines that they're no longer a danger or threat to society. Well, the charges against you have nothing to do with violence. They're not murder. You didn't run somebody over with your car in Mar-a-Lago. So the question then is, well, why would we put you in an insane asylum? To protect the public from what? From your exposing more, or taking into possession illegally more military documents? Well, the only way that could happen is if you were to be elected. But if you're found guilty by reason of insanity, the first thing you'd better do is withdraw from the race. In fact, you should do that before we ever even enter the plea. So if you're not going to be president of the United States, if you're not going to be sitting there with having access to these kinds of documents in the future, you're not a threat. So why put you in an institution? They could put you under house arrest. They could require you to have some sort of treatment. Maybe they lock you up for 6 months or something. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to turn you loose. Like the song, "Turn Me Loose," I say. Turn me loose. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. I'm not just handsome, I'm also a genius. So, let's do it. Let's take this bull by the horns. Let's plead insanity. I'll represent you. I'm not going to charge you. Why am I not going to charge you? Whoa, am I that generous? No, I'm not generous at all. I'm Irish. But there's such a thing as engaging in futile acts, which is another act of insanity. My attorney to get money out of you, that's a futile act. And then I would be insane. So I'm not even going to try. This is a simple case anyway. It's not going to take a lot of my time. We'll just go in there and plead insanity. The government will probably accept that plea. And we're done. And I'm done with you. And don't ever call me again. Thank you, Donnie. I really appreciate it. Au revoir.